Okay, so thanks very much. Welcome along, everybody, to this hour and a half or so that we're going to spend together to talk about the newly published No Time to Waste toolkits. So, like we've said, we're recording these sessions for the presentations to be able to share that with people. We're really excited to be able to launch these toolkits, and we want as many people to hear about this as possible. So, you should see the recordings going up on the New Roots Home website fairly soon. So yeah, just a quick introduction to myself. I'm Pauline Lunn. I'm the director of a charity called In Control Scotland. We are the kind of host for a project called New Roots Home, which is a collaboration of people with lived experience of institutionalisation, family members and supported people, practitioners, advocates, people working in social work, social care, health, all sorts of people who all come together with the kind of shared aim of ending the institutionalisation of autistic people and people with learning disabilities, either in hospital or in inappropriate out-of-area placements. So we developed these toolkits, and that's why you're all here today to find out more about those. So thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to do a quick introduction to the folk we've got speaking today. So I'll pass you along the row to Alistair, you're top of my screen. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So hi, so I'm Alistair. I work for In Control Scotland, and I've been involved with New Roots Home since the start. I have had a long interest in deinstitutionalisation. It's really been since the start of my career.
Excellent, thanks, Alistair. And Susan Ferguson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks. I'm Susan Ferguson, and I'm the head of the Learning Disability Policy Unit in the Scottish Government. So we lead on the coming home work and other things, and we've been having discussions with Alistair recently about the New Roots homework.
Thanks so much, Susan. Maria?
Hi everyone, my name is Maria Teresa Ferrazzoli and I am the Deputy Lead for the Impact Network. I've been involved in this project since the early stages of it with the network. I will talk about that very briefly later. And as a researcher, I am also an expert of how I try to be in institutionalization. So I'm very proud to be part of this project. Nice to meet you all.
Excellent, thanks, Maria. And we're also joined by some family members who are really integral to the work in New Roots Home as well. So you might notice we're not both called Pauline. Next to me, Sylvia. Do you want to introduce yourself, Sylvia?
I'm Sylvia. I've got a son. His name's Jamie, and he has been in a hospital setting for 9 years. And I'll tell you more about that later.
Thanks so much, Sylvia. Ruth?
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I'm the mother of a young man that's autistic and has a learning disability, and he's been in hospital for 8 years now. So I'll talk about that as well later.
Thanks, Ruth. And Karen as well.
Karen, you're on mute, you still?
Oh, sorry.
Hi, we are Karen and Andrew Malcolm. We're the parents of a young man called Fraser Malcolm. Fraser was detained in Woodlands View Hospital for 4.5 years, and due to ward closure in June, July this year, Fraser has transitioned into the community.
Thanks so much, Karen. And excuse me, frog in my throat. We will also be joined at 10 o'clock by Debbie Forsyth, who is also one of the facilitators of the New Roots Home project as well. She'll get a chance to introduce herself later on, I think. So I think that's our introductions. I haven't missed anybody, have I, Alistair? If not, it's over to you.
No, that's fine. That's perfect. Okay, so we're going to try and not make it too much death by PowerPoint. So the first thing to say is obviously there's been a lot of work on the go to try and move things forward from institutionalisation. Susan's already mentioned, obviously, coming home has been the major Scottish Government deliverable on really redescribing what the expectations are in terms of moving us on from the frustrating lack of action that we've had in terms of people being able to move out of hospitals and the reliance on out of area placements in long stay hospitals as a solution. It's not the only bit of work that's been on the go, and there's been another 3 bits of work, for example, just this year. So the TikTok report from the Scottish Human Rights Commission, and also the Measuring Change on Indian Institutionalisation report, also from the Scottish Human Rights Commission, and the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland, Hospital is Not Home, which has looked at people being in hospital for 10 years or more. So there's lots of stuff saying what we need to do and why we need to do it. And I guess what we've decided to do is to say we don't want to replicate any of this work. There's a lot of really good evidence about the direction of travel, what we need to do, but what we felt was missing was a practical way to do it, a how to do it. So the chance to take folk by the hand and say, look, we need to stop doing some stuff that's not working and start doing stuff that is working. And to do that, so we've developed these toolkits. So we've got 3 documents. We've got a professionals edition, a lived and loved edition, and we've got an easy read guide. Now, the idea for that is that each of these editions is tailored to the target market. We've recognised that quite often we start having conversations and we've already got ideas about what we think needs to happen. And sometimes those conversations don't end up with the results that we need to happen. So the idea of each of these toolkits is to encourage people to not come in with straightforward with their asks, and to start with what do we know? How do we understand things? How can we, in a reflective way, start talking the same language and not make it a battle, not make it a back and forth? Because a lot of people have found the current system exhausting, slow, and we need to get the confidence to change what we're doing and how we're doing it. So essentially, the professionals edition, what it does is it gives you some information. It asks you to reflect on a number of statements about where you think you are. Are you doing more of this or more of that? It gives you some examples of case studies, and it gives you what people thought they were doing correctly, the decisions that people were making, and different decisions that people made and how that worked out. So one of the things that we recognise is that if you're going to change what you're doing, you need evidence. You need to be confident that things will be different and that what you're doing works. So the aim of this is that professionals get a chance to think through on a really planned basis in your own time, not just in the heat of a moment in a meeting. What are not just the decisions that they're making, but the basis that they're making decisions. What are they thinking about? What have they considered? And has everybody got the chance to really consider everything in the most thoughtful and considered way? So we've got a professionals edition, we've got a lived and loved edition, which asks, we asked parents, family members and people with lived experience, what were the things that you wish you knew at the start? What are the things that have gotten away from you? The things that didn't make sense, the things that you've struggled to pull back from? And we've asked people to think about how they say things and what they ask for at each stage, so that everybody can get that chance to come together and to bring those conversations up in a way that have the most likely chance of success. And then finally, we've got an easy read guide to it, so that people lived experience themselves have got a chance to understand what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. So that's a brief guide to what the toolkits are. I'm going to pass you over now to our New Roots Home group members and facilitators and parents, and just ask them to work through a little bit of discussion about how we are finding it, what's the real stories behind this. So will I start with Sylvia? Do you want to start us off? Just a quick history of what you think you're facing and what you need to do, what you think we need to do to make a difference, and what you're still waiting for.
Well, if I just give you a wee background to the story, Jamie went into his meant to be forever home, and what happened was they kind of took away a lot of the time that we had with them, the parents had with them. So after 5 months, he didn't cope with that. So he got sectioned. So that was in 2016. They quickly realised that he didn't have a mental health issue, so he shouldn't have been in the hospital. So he could leave hospital, but there was no house. So it was 3 years waiting in a house. And then COVID came along. So when COVID came along, again, he didn't have his, because we got all his kind of family time back again when in the hospital. But then when COVID came along, he lost his family time again. And again, at 5 months, Jamie got sectioned, because before that, the 3 years, he was on delayed discharge. He's now back on delayed discharge, waiting for a house to be built. And I just think I said what I've been saying from the beginning. Jamie only needs his routine back. He just needs his family back. He just needs to be doing the things that he always enjoyed doing. But it's never happened. Basically, he's not been allowed to go out with family. He's not been doing the things that he wanted to do, and it's not good for him, because he does need, I mean, he's got his family time back, and what a difference it's made in the way of us being allowed to visit more. But what he needs is, he writes down, he doesn't speak, Jamie doesn't speak, so he writes down calendar B&B, because he liked going bed and breakfast to calendar. He'll put down Dunoon ferry boat, because he liked going over to Dunoon. He can't do stuff like that with his family anymore, just go a walk. But what a difference in his presentation or his behaviour or whatever they call it. But Jamie's a happier boy because we are allowed to visit now. So it's just a shame that he can't just get his routine back, which I've been asking for to do from. And I think the toolkit will give them their routine back, their things that they like back, their family back quicker, which means they don't suffer as much, and the family don't suffer as well, because it's just awful. He's lost so much his life, and it's so easy to do. Is just give him back what he already had and what he enjoyed.
Thanks very much for that. And I guess one of the things that we recognise is that is the pace of change. So the things that you've asked for are working really well now, but they've taken years to happen. And what we're saying is that the toolkit hopefully would allow us to talk about the risks involved and the potential benefits. And our hope is that it could have got us there years quicker, because Jamie hasn't changed. It's the things that's changed is the professionals' attitudes. That's what's made the difference. The willingness to try the things that you've asked for. It's not like you're asking for different things, I guess, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, basically when we got our time back after COVID, Well, Jamie should have had his time back as well, but it's been all these years later and he's still not got it back.
So the unfairness and the loss of power is a key factor that we identify, and we'll go through that a bit more later. Thanks very much.
One more thing, can I just say, now that he's getting out with Richmond, but not with myself, what a difference my boy is. That what I was asking for, it's shown that that's all he needed. So he needs more of it. He needs out with us.
So that's what we're saying. What we're saying is this works. This isn't as risky as people assume it to be. If we do the things that make sense to people, it does work. Yeah. Perfect. Ruth, do you want us to share your story?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not too great today because I was reading all this tribunal papers last night, and it's just traumatic what my son's been through. There has to be a different way of doing things because, you know, my son is in the State Hospital Learning Disability ward, but he wasn't meant to go there. And because he was sent there with 24 hours notice and an emergency transfer, because there was nowhere else for him to go, no bed in the hospital he was meant to go in, he has suffered so much. The more that I have fought for my son, the more punitive responses I've had. And my son will not speak to his mum and dad until he leaves the hospital. He's given reasons for that. And I know why he's doing it, but it's very difficult. So when I read back about all the treatments my son's had and his reaction, it isn't autism-informed care. It clearly states in his notes that he has suffered in the ward due to the sensory issues, due to trauma, due to medication side effects, due to fear after being assaulted. And I have tried to work with the clinical team, and it's been very, very difficult. So now we're at the stage where he is to be moved on after I got 2 positive doctor's assessments that were quite critical, in fact, very critical of his care. But the doctor's assessment recommended that he should be transferred to a robust community placement because he is so institutionalised, and going to another hospital would be not the right path to go down. But it's still the case. So he's waiting and waiting, and the attitudes in the notes have not changed. It's very much critical of us as parents, critical of Gordon, but not critical of his care. So what I want to see happening with the toolkit is an understanding of listening to people with lived experience, understanding what doesn't work in hospitals and the correct way of doing things to make it better for people. It shouldn't be a battle, and people shouldn't suffer. And there has been a lot of suffering. So my hope is that professionals will reflect, take on, and not take it as a criticism, but take it on as another conversation, and maybe think about another way of trying to improve things for people with autism and learning disabilities trapped in hospitals, because clearly from a lot of stories that I know, there has been behaviours in hospital that as soon as they're in the community, they're still traumatised, but it begins to lessen, and things they couldn't manage in hospital, they're managing in the community. You know, my son's been out the last 2 months and two days out, his first time in 8 years. And he went for a country park, he went for lunch in a cafe, and he loved it. I heard about it weeks later because I only get updates every 2 weeks of one person in the hospital because that's all I'm allowed. But I was so delighted that my son got fresh air, saw the world and got to interact. And he shouldn't be punished for failures that happened to him when he had a crisis, and that's what happened. And I just want people to have good lives and not be classed by feelings that weren't their fault. And that's all I've got to say, really.
Ruth, thanks so much. I appreciate, under the circumstances you sharing, and so the key takeaways there, I would say, we recognise that too often it's mistakes, it's errors in the system, it's just the chance of things happening. So getting sent to the wrong hospital and a refusal to accept the impact that then has on somebody's life, rather than saying, oh, well, that shouldn't have happened, and so we're going to fix it. It just snowballs. It gets worse and worse and worse. And the amount of effort that you've put in to explaining, to getting second opinions, it's all been the power of that conversations. Those haven't been equal conversations where you've said, look, let's look at this, let's look at that, let's prove how this could work, let's try it. Each time it's been huge amounts of effort, and quite often the response has been your questions and that have been ignored for years, and the impact, the trauma on your son has been telling, and it's been unnecessary. So we can do better. We should be able to do better, and the approaches that you've been pushing for, if we can get that equality of conversations happening, there's no reason why we shouldn't get that happening. Thanks so much, Ruth. I'm going to come across to Karen Andrew.
Hi, our young boy Fraser was admitted to Woodlands View Hospital on the 9th of March 2021. It was during the pandemic and we were in the second lockdown, and Fraser wasn't coping with being shut in. He couldn't understand why Christmas Day was with family and then Boxing Day we went into lockdown and he couldn't see anyone anymore. He was admitted to hospital and we were told he was taken there for a 6 to 12 week assessment, and Fraser got out on the 14th of July 2025, this summer. The trauma that he suffered whilst he was in there and to the family is just, I could never, unless you've actually lived it, you would never know what they've lived with. We have been shut out of Fraser's life since last year. On the 30th of August, we were told we're no longer allowed to visit him in the hospital. We didn't get to see him on his 21st birthday. We didn't get to see him on Christmas Day, but all the other family members were allowed to see him. It was just us, the bad parents, because we had challenged the ward on failings. We had, I don't know what the ward had actually told Fraser during the time that we weren't allowed to visit, but Fraser became very angry towards Mum and Dad because Mum and Dad had taken him there, Mum and Dad had left him there, and we had failed him. And we have to live with that every day of our lives. Things that change. My mum passed away in October last year, and on her deathbed, she said she never got to see her grandson out of hospital. He spent 3 years on delayed discharge from September 22. And we were waiting for a care provider and a house. We managed at one of his tribunals in June last year, June 24, to make pace on that, and there was 2 recorded matters put on his tribunal, and we managed to get a house by the July of 24. Then he had to wait for a care provider. Now Fraser doesn't understand a day a week, a month, a year. So he just thought he was left there indefinitely. When his mum and dad were taken away from him, he absolutely went into crisis, and he started playing out behaviour on the ward that would get the staff to come in and interact with him. He had, and in February this year, he had put his hearing aid into his mouth and swallowed it, and this resulted in his hearing aids being taken away from him, despite Mental Welfare Commission and audiology saying he must have them back when he was settled. So he now had no hearing and he couldn't communicate with anyone. So that brought Fraser to the peak of the worst time he'd had the whole time he was in hospital, which was between February this year and June. In January 25, the Richmond Fellowship came on board, and they have been working to build a care team for Fraser for transitioning out to his own home. Unfortunately, they couldn't get him. Fraser wouldn't leave his room in the hospital, so he didn't move around the ward anymore. He just stayed in his room. He had nothing in his room, and at some points he didn't even have a mattress or a pillow. So very sadly, he was living a very primitive life. And for Andy and I that were eventually allowed to visit him through his bedroom window, it was just horrendous. The staff then had stopped giving us phone calls and updates. We were only allowed an update from his psychiatrist once a week, and if he was on annual leave, we didn't get that update. So there was stuff going on a daily basis with Fraser, sometimes 5 to 6 restraints a day, and we weren't getting told about it. And then in June, we got a phone call to say that before that we'd had an incident at the end of April, which would have been a life-changing incident for Fraser, and Fraser had swallowed the handle of a teaspoon on a 2-to-1 watch and was taken to Crosshouse Hospital to have it removed. And again, he was trying to interact to get people into his room, so he put the teaspoon in his mouth, and then when they gone in to retrieve it, he jumped back and swallowed it. We then find out that 2 weeks before there'd been a similar incident with a teaspoon, and we hadn't been told about it, and the cutlery hadn't been changed, which then led to this incident and how serious it was. Then in June this year, we got a phone call to say that Woodlands View 7A was closing, and they had 1 month for all patients to be out of the ward, and there would no patient would remain in that ward after the 14th of July. So we were then in turmoil, not knowing how that was going to work for Fraser, considering he wouldn't even leave his bedroom. And we were brought a company was brought to us as an emergency care provider. And on the 14th of July, Fraser, the minute the minibus arrived at 7:30 in the morning to take him home, Dad had made him a Canva video to show him that he was getting out, and he got it the weekend leading up to the Monday, and the minute he knew he was going, we'd given him hope that he was getting out of there. The minute the minibus arrived, he wasn't hanging about. We got a phone call to say the bus had arrived at 7:30, and at 20 to 8, Fraser was in it on his way home. He'd walked out of the hospital after 4.5 years and just got in the minibus to go home. Rand's dad had been providing his care up to date, and they've been absolutely excelling themselves. They've given Fraser back a life. He's been in the water over the summer. We still have bumps on the road, but he's been doing so many things. Yesterday we actually had him down at the Heads of Ayr Farm Park in Ayr. So and it just doing stuff that his dad and I never thought we would see him ever doing again. So basically what I'm trying to say is he's went from this shut in, locked in person to outside living a life with no rehabilitation or anything. But what he is terrified of is, very sadly, because the NHS have looked after him all his life, but he is terrified of hospital. And if he receives a hospital letter, he scores the NHS bit out at the top of the letter and he wants to get rid of it. And he got a hospital appointment through to go to as an outpatient to Ayr. And when the day came around, he refused to get in the car. He was terrified. When he first came out of hospital, he's constantly looking over his shoulder to see who was going to come and take him out. And we've now got to a level of trust with his care provider, and we're working very hard, and Andy and I building a relationship with him again. But he's a very, very traumatised young man, and he's just learning now to trust again. And the hospital have a lot of what Fraser went in with, the institutionalised behaviour Fraser now presents with. He did not have when he went in there, and we've got a person in a much worse place than what went into Woodlands View in 2021. So, and Andy and I, every day of our life, regret asking for help.
Thanks so much for sharing. That's a lot of detail, folks. And I guess so. To summarise, basically, again, with all three of these stories, people have got worse. There's not been a clinical value in a lot of the treatment. It's been, people have become trapped in this cycle of, we don't know how to get somebody back out, or we don't have the facilities to move somebody quickly, and therefore the trauma just happens and happens, and then we stop believing that people are capable of change, that people are capable of surprising us. And what we've seen, the picture that I shared just before on the screen, was Fraser in his hot tub that was just taken in the last couple of weeks, and a picture of Sylvia with her son Jamie out on a walk. And that's what I'll just bring you back in a second, Andrew. So basically, yeah, people can if we have the right approach and we trust each other to try things differently, we can do that. The difference is that we have to flex and adapt our plans, and the only way that we can confidently do that is to write things down in the correct way, come to decisions in the right way, so that we are considering the right options. We consider the wrong things to be risky. Andy, you looking to come in there?
Sorry, just 2 seconds. And Karen went into great detail there, and you know, Ruth and Sylvia did well. Ruth, I know you're struggling. It's a hard watch there, but I'd note down some key points there. What the biggest mistake we made was, as Karen said, was asking for help. That was mistake number one, and that's something we have to live with every day. The pace of change within these places is not correct. Mm-hmm. You know, Fraser can change in the minute, in the hour, in the day, in the week, and it's not going to be plain sailing. So they need to adapt. It's not at the hospital's pace. It needs to be at the individual's pace. And Fraser's just proven that by coming out. So that needs to change. In the hospitals, they're risk adverse. Now, we shouldn't be irresponsible, I appreciate, but life is about risk. So instead of just shutting the individual down because it may be risky, that can't happen. If there is an incident, they have to calculate and do calculated risk, not just this has happened, and shut it down and never do it again. And that's what happens. The final point is, and I'll let you get on because I know we've overstepped here, but I would just like to say that the parents, we're the professionals. We're the ones with the lived experience. And we are not the source of the problem.
Parental blame.
And it's just parental blame. So let's shut the Ruths, the Sylvias, the Karens, and all the others out. That's really all I have to say. That's the points I think that need to change from the very moment parents ask for help, you know, to including us in getting our individuals out. That's
perfect. Okay, thank you so much. So what I guess what we're saying there is we all need to be equal partners. We need to have that respect and that change in accountability. We're gonna come to that shortly. We're going to run through how these toolkits help us to get to a different place where we can all contribute more equally and achieve much better things. Pauline, do you want to say anything about like the professionals group and what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who aren't aware, I mentioned at the start, New Roots Home is a collaboration of lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, life experiences, jobs, labels, all of the rest. Our work is collaborative, but we have 3 separate spaces. We have a space for people with lived and loved experience, which is a safe space specifically for them. We have a similar space for the practitioners and professionals involved in the work as well. And then we have a shared space for coming together to do that real collaboration and learning as well. And they're fluid. There's lots of collaboration across the 3 groups. So I chair the practitioners and professionals space, and it's, I suppose, important to reflect that nobody's benefiting particularly from the current setup. It's not serving people in hospitals very well. It's certainly not serving family members well as they're trying to get people home, but it's also not serving the professionals working in these environments well either. Bad support or badly planned care can be dangerous and risky to workers' lives, can lead to more assaults, can lead to greater turnover and sickness and stress and all of these things as well. And what I've learned over the last few years of us being involved in this is that the professionals feel stuck too. They're stuck in an area where there has been very little innovation, very little change in the way that autistic folk and people with learning disabilities have been looked after in a clinical setting in decades. Really nothing's changed. It's a place where for lots of us who come from the kind of social care or social work backgrounds, we see the erosion of that social model of disability, and the clinical is held up to the highest standard. And we see the impact, and that we've just heard from the families about the difference it's made to Jamie to just get out and do stuff that he enjoys. Fraser being in his hot tub, having a swim in the garden, all these ordinary things that are you can't write up in a clinical assessment. They're about humans. So we work really hard in the practitioners and professional space to think about how can we advocate for better and think about what change could possibly look like. And the practitioners and professionals group, we co-produced that toolkit that's got that name on it, the professionals edition as well. So it's a really powerful space of people who are motivated to make a difference and who feel that better is possible. So it's a privilege to get to host that wee group. Don't know if it would be worthwhile maybe passing over to, is Debbie on the call to talk about the Lived and Loved group? Because that's the second offshoot, and maybe you could tie it together, Alistair.
Debbie's not here, I'm afraid.
I am here.
Oh, is she not?
Oh, she's just turned up. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
wasn't expecting to say anything, but yeah, I could say just a little bit. Yeah, the Lived and Loved space, we recognised that we needed to create a space so that the people with lived experience and their families could come together and share what was happening currently, and to, and share their stories as well. So it's kind of like a peer support, but also peer, like we're all learning from each other. And then we also take some time to think about the New Roots Home campaign and what we would like to do to try to influence the changes that we would like to see. So yeah, I think it's been running for a few months now, so it seems to be going quite well, and I really I really love that people come along to it, but they also come along to the main mixed New Roots Home group and collaborate with the practitioners. So yeah, that's me.
And there we go. Alistair, you're on mute, in case you didn't realise.
Oh, jeepers, that's me on mute. I was perfect. Okay, so yeah, the shared space. It's a very difficult space to start with because you've got this raw emotion, you've got these powerful stories, you've got professionals trying to make things better, but there's the anxiety about what do we say, how can we change things, and this is about having these conversations. We need to recognise what doesn't work. Take the emotion out of it and start asking the right questions. Measure the right things and make sure that we're pointing in the right direction, because at the moment it still feels safe doing the wrong things. A lot of the good practice that we see happens in pockets, and what we want to do is this to be universal. We don't want to just see little bits of good practice, pilot programs, we want this to be everybody's experience. The power and accountability to be equal. We want the sort of questions that we asked to work, to get us to places that we feel confident to do the right things, and absolutely stuff that's in line with the Coming Home Report, with the Mental Welfare Commission, all the good stuff that we're trying to get to. But what we're actually seeing on the ground is that a lot of places are really struggling to make that shift, and we just want to help facilitate that on a practical basis. Okay, so we're just going to pass you over to Maria, who's going to do a bit of a quick run through of impact and how impact's been involved.
Yeah, so hi everyone, and it's just like an emotion for me to see this coming through, because I've been involved with it since the beginning. And I think we have already seen like the needs of a toolkit, of something that is supporting like better practice. And the Impact has supported the creation of this toolkit, stay very close to the work that In Control Scotland and New Roots Home and all these people were doing together. Just to give you a quick overview, Impact is an implementation center, and the main aim is to increase the use of high quality evidence. Impact stands for Improving Adult Care Together. And what we do is to try to identify the needs of different evidence, including the lived experience and professional experience, not just the traditional evidence that is the academic, in order to improve practice and make things work better, because we can see how much can be done and can be like very impactful in a negative way on people when services are not provided as people need. Next slide, please, Alistair. So in particular, In Control Scotland and New Roots Home was involved in one of the way how Impact works, and is the Impact Network. And the Impact Network brings people together to talk about issues around social care, and we try to improve practice outcome, try to bring together learning and sharing expertise, as some of the parents were telling about, that we are the expert. We all are the expert, the people using the services, the families, the carers, the practitioner. And it's only when we are all together and we equalize our expertise, our knowledge, we can find the solution to make things work properly. And that is what In Control Scotland and New Roots Home have done with this toolkit. So one of the network that we had in 2023 and 2024, if you click on Alistair, yes, was on the topic of people with learning disability and autistic people living long stay hospital. And In Control Scotland and New Roots Home was just one of the local network that was running across the 4 UK nation. And of course, they were based in Scotland, but we had other network. And one of the people from one of the network, the one in Wales, was also here in the call before. And what they have done was like discussing all together about the existing evidence on the topic. Next slide, please. I think you have to click twice. Alistair. Thank you. So every time we start, every network starts from evidence. And I think this is the strength of this toolkit, is that is evidence-based and is co-produced. So the evidence review that we shared at the beginning collected the experience of people, what is about like the academic evidence, and also what is around there about the voice of people that are using services and what is out there from practitioners. And unfortunately, our evidence review at the beginning highlighted how the voices of people with lived experience is missing from the evidence that are out there on this topic. And in particular that, unfortunately, this is a long-standing problem, is the same in the UK and worldwide, and of course has a huge impact on equality and human rights. Based on this evidence, people have discussed it and they came together, next slide, and this is going to be the last one, but just to point out, the key lesson from this network were, first of all, the importance of collective action, to work all together to try to avoid and prevent admission to Lockstay Hospital for autistic people and people with learning disabilities, because we have seen the negative impact that they have. The importance of taking an equality and human rights approach that is at the core of this specific toolkit. What are the negative consequences of risk management culture in institutional settings? And we heard all the stories that all the family have shared now. And also the importance of co-production. And I believe that this toolkit is so important because it managed to put together all these elements and is based on the experience of people, and it looks at how to do things differently. And most importantly, it has included in it the experiences of professional families and like the lived experience of people with lived experience. So well done for doing it. And Impact is very proud to be part of it.
Thanks, Maria. That's it. And your involvement, given the credibility and the chance for us to physically develop it, has been crucial, because what we want to do is make this mainstream, and this has been, your support has been incredibly important in the development of the toolkits, and in terms of connecting us to other people generally. Okay, so we're going to just run through a bit about how the toolkits work now. These are some details to get in touch with Maria and Impact if you want to know more of their work. What we're just going to do is we're just going to run you through a few slides. Pauline, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know about the work of In Control Scotland, New Roots Home is just one thing that we're involved with, but everything that we do is about co-producing transformational change. And we do an awful lot of work in supporting people and organisations to work through change processes. So we really know how complicated these systems are, how bureaucratic these systems can be, and actually how much time and effort it takes to create long-term meaningful change within these big systems. Change takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, and it takes bravery as well sometimes, and not all of those things are in a constant source of supply at all times, and they can be really varied. So what we wanted to do when we were planning for the development of these toolkits was to create things that were simple and accessible, so that they wouldn't be off-putting to people thinking, oh God, another massive thing for me to work through, but also to have enough substance within them and enough integrity to be able to instill some confidence in their use. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Alistair, I'll talk about how we did it. So we, as Alistair mentioned at the start, there are 3 toolkits, and we co-produced these with quite a wide group of people. So the Lived and Loved Experience one was obviously worked with a fantastic group, some of whom are here today, of family members, people who've been in placements or hospitals in the past, and folk who are still currently stuck in the system. For the the practitioners and professionals one, we worked with academics from Edinburgh Napier and Impact. We worked with support providers who are providing support in the community. We worked with social work practitioners and leaders who are working within the system at the moment. People working in nursing, you know, advocates, a whole bunch of people to all get focused on this one project. And to do that, we had to create this safe space. It can be really difficult to think of things that you don't see, like to visualize something different to what you've already experienced. So that in itself takes a wee bit of time. But we created that safe space for reflection and for generating ideas. And I think throughout the process of actually developing the toolkits, there was a really positive outcome just through that as well for people to start believing a wee bit more, whether you're a professional or whether you're a family member, that actually better is possible and there is a better way of doing things. So the actual process was valuable as well as the output. So if you want to pop onto the next wee slide, Alistair. And throughout the kind of development of these toolkits, we looked at some of the patterns that we regularly see, the patterns of responses that we see in situations like this. So this is an analysis of a kind of pattern of response that happens when somebody's displaying some unwanted behaviours. And we were really honest about these, and we unpicked them, and we thought and kind of described the flaws that we see. So this is a kind of flawed cycle of actions that we see. People were telling us they see quite commonly. Starts with behaviour, emphasis being on reducing behaviour through compliance. We heard about Fraser having his blankets and his mattress and his hearing aids taken away, or Jamie having reduced access to family. That's through all of the stories that we hear. But that kind of standard pattern of a bit of punishment, almost removing comforts, reducing freedom, and responses like that, which then end up with a flawed assumption that that's going to make people behave differently, when actually, if you take away the things that are important to people, tends not to make them behave in a more positive way. But yet this is the pattern that we see people getting stuck in. So we did exercises like this where we took these situations and analysed the responses and tried to come up with an alternative response. So I'll hand over to you, Alistair, to talk about the other sides.
Yeah, so I guess, thank you. We identified some of the things we should be asking instead of the negative cycle that we're seeing. And one of those was that we need to understand what works for the person. And this is the crucial part. Even if we can't provide it all, there's a huge anxiety about naming things that we don't have the power to deliver on. So if you don't have the appropriate accommodation, if you don't have the staffing available, there's sometimes been an urge to just not mention that because it feels like we're admitting that we are failing somebody. But if we don't do that, then what often happens is the individual gets blamed for not coping. So we've heard examples today of the absolutely massive traumas that can result from that. If the match up between what we are doing and what the person needs isn't right, there is huge amounts of harm done. And we keep hearing stories in the media. There's been another announcement today in Edinburgh. We keep hearing stories where there's a mismatch in the power, there's a mismatch in the dynamic, and it has horrendous outcomes for people. So what we're saying is we need to act in a way that allows the person to trust us and take logical changes at a pace they can cope with. We need to alter what we do to fit what works for the person. Now this is a significant difference because often people are following a set pattern of we do this until the person behaves in this way and then we do this. What we are asking is for people to be flexible and constantly think, what are the indicators that this person is coping with this? How can we change within an agreed set of parameters about what's effective, and that we work on the transition as quickly as possible, recognising the person is not likely to behave in a different way while they're under stress. We shouldn't have to wait for the person to change. We are the ones that need to change, and we need to be the adaptable ones. And we reflected this in the toolkit. As Pauline said, the aim for the toolkit is not to be an academic document. This is a practical, warts and all examples of these are ways to approach it. These are ways to have the conversations, ways to reach decisions, and make sure that we can decide these things absolutely together. If we can change each part of this process, it's amazing the difference it makes. What we're hoping for is that these are practical, balanced and inclusive conversations, that we then have ethical and logical measures of success. We've noticed that people don't set out what the measures of success are at the start. So when somebody's admitted, nobody says, well, if we notice an increase in somebody's self-injurious behaviour, if we notice that we are going to double or triple their PRN medication, then that won't be a success and we will change things. And yet those things happen. So risks caused by the environment or inaction, they can't be ignored. We have to take the opportunities to test out positive ideas of risk-taking risks. We need a balanced view of what good looks like. The idea that leaving things alone is safe is not true. We need to keep moving forward, and hopefully what you've heard today indicates the level of trauma that just keeping on doing things does. We have to do it differently. So we need to support a rebalance in the idea of risks, responsibility and accountability. We need to be realistic. And this is instead of what we're doing just now, not as well as. So we're not asking people to do more. We're asking people to stop doing some of the stuff that doesn't work. We're going to, we're going to show how it works. We're going to help, but that helps bring people with us, redefine what and how we record, and be open to change and flexible approaches by progressing together, and we share those benefits, and those things just keep going as a circle. Debbie, do you want to come in and talk a bit about this this diagram? You happy to come in? Do you want me to do it? Oh,
I think it'd be better if you spoke about it.
Okay, that's okay. I will do. That's fine. So I guess this is the diagram that what we've tried to do is put like all the critical factors that if you're having a conversation, if you're making a decision, just consider whether all of these things are present. If they're not present, the chances are you're going in the wrong direction. If you haven't got that honesty, that shared values, that integrity of working with individuals and families, and that professional and personal alignment, if you've got the trust, the action, the values and the rights, if you're not reevaluating the risk and creating the space for learning and working on processes that actively and effectively analyse in line with the law and policy, if you don't have a focus on continuous improvement and quality of life, and reflection is not supported and acted upon, then you're not going to have that curiosity, and you're not going to have that trust, and you're not going to make that progress together. And that's what we really feel we have to do differently. Okay, so I think we're back on track, bang on time. So what I want to do is just to bring us into breakout rooms. We're going to just go into sorry. I'm just sorry. I've run past Susan. Sorry. I've run past Susan. Sorry, it's Susan next, and then breakout.
That was the panic from Pauline, who hasn't set up the breakout rooms yet, because she was going to do that.
That's me. That's me not reading my own slides. Okay, Susan, can you just share a little bit? Hi.
Yeah. Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me along today, Alistair. I really just wanted to talk you quickly through some of what the Scottish Government's doing and some of the discussions we've been having with Alistair. I'm very sorry I haven't done any slides, but I can send a quick note round after of what I've talked about if that's helpful to anyone. So, I mean, you'll all know that the Scottish Government published the Coming Home Implementation Report in 2022, and it had a number of recommendations. So it's maybe just worth quickly recapping on what we've delivered to date and what's still ongoing. So we now have the Dynamic Support Register, which was launched in May 2023. And it's really, really important to have the data to understand what's going on out there and to be able to measure progress. So the register and the data in the register informs local planning and provision, and it helps us to gather all the information in one place, and it also collates it nationally, so we publish that quarterly, and it helps us to measure progress and look at how things are going. We also launched a peer support network in October 2024. So that brings together a whole range of professionals and HSCPs from all over Scotland, and they have sessions on particular issues of interest, webinars, surgeries, workshops, etc. And I know Alistair's been asked to do a surgery on the New Roots Home toolkit. So focus on the professional one, but also, you know, the wider concept. So that will be really good. In terms of accountability and support, one of the recommendations was to establish a national support panel. So again, that was to provide a bit of oversight on delivery across Scotland, but also some support areas where they needed that, to help them work through some of the issues they were facing, and to, you know, make a difference in terms of the delayed discharges. So we have consulted on that as part of the LDAN bill consultation, and I'll come on to something else in a minute that we're doing around that. We also had a community living change fund. So there was 20 million of funding went out to HSCPs in 2021, and that was multi-year funding. So we're in the process of just getting the final report back on what that funding's delivered. And there have been other little pots of funding we've provided, which I think have made a specific difference on the ground. Most recently, what we've done in July was to set up a short life working group, and it's very action and delivery focused. So developing and delivering things as it's going along, but it's going to develop an action plan by the end of the year. Now that's quite focused on the professional side. It's got HSCPs and other sort of relevant bodies involved in that, and the specific areas of work it's looking at is a national support panel, potentially piloting something in preparation for legislation. There's work around people in hospital for 10 plus years, and also the Mental Welfare Commission's doing some work around that. Housing, which is obviously a really big issue, is one of the areas it's looking at. Dynamic support register data, how that can be improved, used better. Skilling up of community services, so this is staff and the skills that they have, and I think we also recognise, and this has been mentioned today, that you know, the workforce is an important element of being able to move people out into communities, so that's obviously a wider issue as well. There's a group looking at the redesign of inpatient services, and then there's a group looking at collaborative commissioning as well. So that work's still in train, but there'll be a report, an action plan coming out around that, which will report on what that group's delivered and also what's still to be done, and it will probably set out a bit of a longer term look as well. We're engaging with the Mental Welfare Commission and the Scottish Human Rights Commission around this work. So I think we met with the Scottish Human Rights Commission a couple of weeks ago to discuss the TikTok report and that human rights approach and framework. And I know that the Minister's meeting with the SHRC chair as well next week. The other thing we've been doing is just having discussion around family support. So we've been speaking to PAMIS and In Control Scotland about what the family element of this looks like, so the family lived experience element of it. I I think we're really interested in the toolkit because it's very much been developed from the lived experience perspective. It encourages people to think differently and think differently about risk, and I find that really interesting. As I said, Alice has been invited to do a surgery at the peer support network on it. But we're also discussing a range of work that we could undertake to test the embedding of the New Roots Home approach into work at a national and local level. So we've had a proposal from Alistair, which we're considering at the moment. So we've chaired the Short Life Working Group chair, Dr. Anne MacDonald, who I think you probably know from previous work. So all of that's going on at the moment, but I just wanted to recognise that that lived experience of family support element is very much in our minds and very important, and we think there's potential in the toolkit. I just also wanted to mention other work we're doing around prevention and early interventions. So you're probably aware of the Learning Disability annual health checks. Pace of delivery with those in terms of implementation was a bit slow at first, but that's really picked up over the last year. And I think what we're seeing from those is that issues are being picked up earlier. If there's a risk of support breakdown, that's being picked up earlier. Health issues are being picked up earlier and onward referrals. So I just wanted to mention that as well, because I think that's another important aspect of the picture.
Thanks very much, Susan. Appreciate you coming along and sharing all that. Much appreciated. And like you say, there's been a lot of effort to move forward so many aspects of folks' lives, and what's expected has been really clear. And I guess what we're all here for is how we make it happen. So I guess what we're looking for now is for us to just go into some breakout rooms and just have a discussion about what help you need to embed this, and where you think we can get to in terms of, like, say, for example, for the next 6 months, how can we stop this just being a good idea and actually get it working where you are, whether you're an individual, a family, working for a health social care partnership. So I think we're just going to pop you into some breakout rooms. So hopefully you should be seeing that. So one of the things we need to do is evaluate the toolkits. So we've got personal engagement with toolkits, organisational involvement, and that's what we're speaking to the Scottish Government about, how we embed this, how we make this business as usual. We need to have that inclusion. We need to have that collaboration about how we put things together. There needs to be consistency. We've seen CPA minutes that seem to blame the person and the family for how they are behaving and don't acknowledge all of the environmental factors. We need to have accurate results that indicate what has contributed to it, and we need to be asking ourselves, did we make a difference? If not, what are we doing? What are we going to do next? We need to share the learning, and we need to build on what works. If we develop that confidence, we can show absolutely there are common grounds in all the stories that we've got, that if we measure the right things, if we have the right conversations, if we trust each other, and if we keep that flexibility, people can go from 0 to 100. It's amazing, the difference. And we just need to get it in amongst. We are already working with Napier University, and we've been doing some work with student nurses as well as student social workers. And the aim is to get it in at the ground there. We need to get into clinical settings. We've had a couple of approaches. We've been working with folk in some HSCPs, and the idea is that what we need to do is get pilots in those areas so that people can actually see how this works and feel more confident with it. We've also got obviously we've got our meetings. So as Pauline said, she chairs the professionals meeting. The next one of those is on the 6th of November. All the meetings are 3 till 4:30 on Teams, so on a Thursday afternoon. The next Lived and Loved group is the 20th of November. and the next main group meeting is the 27th of November, and that's our last one for the year, and then we'll share for next year. Below is the email address for New Roots Home, and the email address where you can download the toolkit. You can read other bits of research that we've done. We did a one called Are We Heading in the Right Direction, which compares the work done by New Roots Home with two people. One where we were welcomed in and used the approach of the toolkits, and we got him out inside 4 months, and one where a couple of years later we're still working to secure his move to the community, because that there wasn't that welcome, there wasn't that willingness to work. So this approach absolutely works, and we really would encourage you to join us, to come along, sign up to come to some of the meetings. You don't have to come to all of them, but just be part of this movement, because we can absolutely share our stories and change things together.